Welcome back to SleepLab Science. Tonight, as you settle into whatever space feels safe and quiet, allow the world around you to soften. Let the lights dim, let the tension ease out of your shoulders, and let your breath become slow and gentle. This moment is yours, a calm pocket of time carved out from the noise of the day. And we're going to fill it with something ancient, peaceful, and endlessly soothing. Before we begin, take one more slow breath. Feel the rise of your chest and the soft fall that follows. With every exhale, picture the day drifting farther and farther away like sand slipping through your fingers, impossible to hold onto for long. The thoughts that were loud just moments ago begin to lose their edges, becoming softer, blurrier, lighter. Soon, there'll be nothing more than distant echoes, fading into the background. Tonight, we're traveling deep into the quiet world of geology. Not the dramatic, fiery eruptions you might imagine, but the gentle story of a planet that moves slowly, patiently, endlessly. A planet that carries memories older than oceans, older than mountains, older than life itself. A planet whose rhythms are so slow and steady that simply imagining them can help your mind unwind. In the soft darkness of your room, you're invited to drift with those rhythms. Imagine the Earth not as something solid and unchanging, but as something alive in its own way, breathing in the rise of mountains and breathing out in the soft crumble of stone to sand. Imagine continents drifting silently over millions of years, moving with the calm certainty of tides. Imagine ancient forests fossilizing grain by grain, turning to stone with a patience so deep it feels like the earth is whispering. There's something profoundly comforting about knowing that the ground beneath us is ancient, stable, and unhurried. Its changes are slow enough to lull the mind, slower than sleep, slower than dreams. And tonight, we'll walk gently into that slowness. We'll explore the soft stories written in layers of rock, the quiet memories locked inside crystals, the delicate marks of ancient oceans hidden in mineral grains. Everything in geology moves at the pace of deep rest, a pace perfect for guiding your thoughts into stillness. So let your breathing match that rhythm. In, slow and soft. Out, even slower. Feel how your muscles begin to loosen. Feel how your jaw unclenches. Notice the heaviness spreading through your arms and legs as your body prepares itself for rest. Nothing is rushed here. Nothing demands your attention. You are simply floating through a gentle landscape of time. Picture yourself standing on a quiet shoreline at dusk. The sky is pale lavender, fading into deep blue. The waves stroke the sand in a rhythm so steady it feels like the world itself is breathing. Beneath your feet are grains of ancient mountains, once towering peaks, now softened by thousands of years of wind and water. Every grain is a tiny history book. Every grain is a reminder that time is patient and that you are allowed to rest. As we move deeper into tonight's journey, we'll follow these stories not to learn in the usual sense, but to let the mind drift the way sand drifts through water. We're not racing through facts or chasing conclusions. We're simply floating through the quiet ancientness of Earth, through the calm movements of stone, through the peaceful unfolding of time. So settle in, sink deeper into your pillow. Feel the weight of your body gently anchoring you. And as the night gathers softly around you, allow each word to become slower, quieter, warmer, easing your mind into that space between waking and dreaming. Welcome back to SleepLab Science. Let's begin our slow journey into the peaceful, ancient world of geology. Part I, the slow breath of Earth. Settle your mind. Let the noise of the day fade into the background like a distant tide pulling away from shore. As you soften your breath, imagine the ground beneath you, not as something solid and unmoving, but as something ancient, alive, and endlessly patient. A world that shifts in rhythms too slow for the human eye to notice, like the faint inhale and exhale of a giant sleeping just beneath the surface. Earth is not a quiet stone floating through space. It is a being of heat, pressure, and memory. And in this first chapter of our nighttime journey, we'll drift gently into those memories, into the story written not in words, but in layers of rock that have been accumulating for billions of years. Layers that formed grain by grain, under oceans that rose and disappeared, beneath mountains that grew taller than imagination and then wore away into dust. Take a moment. Let yourself sink into the sense of deep time. Imagine looking down from a high cliff, where the rock beneath your hands feels cool, textured, and rough. In the pale dusk light, horizontal bands of color wrap around the canyon like the pages of a book left open by the universe. Rust red, honey gold, ash gray, olive green, colors so soft and faded that they seem to hum with age. Each stripe is a moment. Each moment lasted millions of years. If you placed your hand there long enough, you might swear you could feel the weight of the past pressing quietly against your palm. Not in a threatening way, but like the gentle pressure of a sleeping creature breathing just beneath a blanket. We often think of rocks as things without stories, but geology reveals the opposite. The entire planet is a storyteller, and its voice is slow. So slow that to truly hear it, we must allow ourselves to loosen our own sense of urgency, to drift into a rhythm that moves at the pace of mountains forming, oceans widening, continents drifting apart like clouds across the sky. Let's journey into one of those stories now, the story of how Earth remembers, the memory held in stone. Picture a shallow sea from 500 million years ago. The water is warm and still, illuminated by the soft shimmer of a young sun. Small, simple creatures drift through the water, nothing like the fish we know today. Their shells fall gently to the seafloor when they die, joining fine grains of sand carried by slow underwater currents. Over centuries, these grains settle. Over millennia, they thicken. And over millions of years, they compress into stone. Limestone, a rock formed from countless quiet endings. Now imagine that the sea vanishes. The water drains away as continents rearrange themselves in a slow dance. The sea floor hardens in the open air. Rain washes across it. Wind sweeps its surface. And rivers begin carving through it, cutting deeper and deeper until the stone remembers its underwater origins. You might walk across this stone thousands or millions of years later and never guess you were stepping on a vanished ocean. But the Earth remembers. Every fossil you've ever seen, the spiraled shell, the imprint of a fern, the delicate pattern of an ancient insect's wings, is Earth whispering, "This is what once lived here. This is who I used to be." There's something soothing in knowing that the ground beneath us is not silent at all. It's just speaking in a language of time too slow for hurry, too patient for the frantic pace of the modern world. That patience is part of what makes geology such a calming lens. A reminder that not everything must happen quickly. That change, even profound change, can be subtle, gradual, steady, like the way mountains rise. Mountains, Earth's slowest dreams. Most people imagine mountains as permanent, massive, immovable, but mountains are in constant motion only so slowly that we mistake their stillness for eternity. Imagine two enormous sections of Earth's crust drifting toward each other. They move only a few centimeters a year, about as fast as your fingernails grow. But over millions of years, they collide, push upward, buckle and fold. And from that gentle but relentless pressure, mountains emerge. Not in a burst, not in a moment, but in steady, silent persistence. Consider the Himalayas, the tallest mountain range on Earth. To us, they seem impossibly ancient, but in geological time, they are young, still rising even now, tiny fractions of millimeters each year. If you could watch them in time-lapse over 50 million years, they'd look like slow waves of stone rising into the sky. But in real time, they simply sit in quiet dignity, letting wind shape their faces and snow carve their ridges. There's a calmness in knowing that mountains are both fragile and eternal, both rising and eroding at the same time. A perfect balance, like a breath held in the long pause between inhale and exhale. Fire beneath stillness. Now soften your focus. Let your awareness drift deeper beneath the mountains, into the warm layers of the mantle, where molten rock moves like thick honey. We rarely think about the heat beneath our feet, but Earth is glowing from the inside, a slow, molten glow that has lasted for billions of years. And from time to time, that glow reaches the surface through volcanoes. But even volcanoes, dramatic as they seem, are part of Earth's slow rhythm. A volcano might erupt suddenly, but the cycle that feeds it, the melting of rock, the rising of magma, the pressure building over centuries, moves at glacial speed. Imagine magma rising beneath a volcanic island. It takes thousands of years for the molten material to reach a chamber close enough to the surface to cause an eruption. For centuries it warms the rock above it like a low ember under sand. The ground swells so imperceptibly that entire generations might live and die without noticing the change. Volcanoes are reminders that even violent events have gentle beginnings that unfold in silence, too slow for the human eye to see. And somehow, this knowledge is soothing. Even destruction on planetary scales moves with patience. The slow sculpting of water. Now bring your attention back upward, into the softness of air and the cool whisper of water. Water, more than anything else, shapes the surface of Earth with tender persistence. A single drop is nothing, but a river is the world's most patient artist. Imagine a river cutting through solid stone, not by force, but by repetition. Day after day, for years beyond counting, water glides over rock, loosening grains of sand, carrying them downstream, smoothing sharp edges, carving sinuous curves. The river doesn't rush to finish its work. It simply continues, year after year, century after century, until the canyon is formed deep, graceful, ancient. If you stood beside that river today, the water might look hurried, but the process is the opposite. It is a lullaby of persistence, a slow hand drawing lines across the surface of Earth. And rain, even gentler than rivers, has shaped continents in ways we can hardly imagine. One tiny raindrop cannot carve a valley, but billions of raindrops over millions of years can reshape entire landscapes. This is the soothing truth of geology. Small things matter, especially when they happen slowly. The pulse of continents. Now take one more deep breath. Imagine Earth's crust as a mosaic of gigantic plates floating on the soft, warm mantle. They drift, collide, glide apart. Not with violence, but with slow, irresistible momentum. Africa moves toward Europe. Australia drifts northward. South America slowly separates from Africa like two old friends walking in different directions. We don't feel this motion. We don't hear it. But if you were to speed up time, continents would bloom open like petals of a stone flower. In 100 million years, the world will look different. Oceans will widen and vanish. Mountain ranges will collapse and be reborn. Islands will merge. New landscapes will rise from the sea. Geology reminds us that nothing is permanent, but nothing disappears suddenly. Everything unfolds in long, soothing arcs of time. A final breath for part 1. As you let this first section settle into your thoughts, allow yourself to drift into the same calm rhythm the Earth embraces. Slow change, soft patience, quiet transformation. The planet beneath your feet is never still, but it never hurries. It moves like breath. It evolves like memory. It writes its story grain by grain, layer by layer, through cycles of calm creation lasting longer than imagination itself. Let yourself rest in that slowness. And when you're ready, we can continue deeper into the ancient heart of Earth. Part 2: Rivers of Time, Oceans of Memory. Let your breath soften again. Feel it flow slowly in and out, like a tide moving across the quiet sand of a forgotten beach. As we drift into part 2, imagine yourself not standing on solid ground anymore, but floating gently above the surface of an ancient ocean. A world shaped not by sudden events, but by slow, persistent movements of water that have been sculpting Earth for billions of years. Water is the planet's oldest storyteller. Before mountains rose, before forests stretched their green fingers toward the sky, before animals walked the continents, water was already at work, carving, smoothing, dissolving, building. Tonight, we follow the water, where oceans begin. Imagine the Earth 4 billion years ago. The surface was hot, unsettled, still cooling from its formation. Steam rose in thick white clouds, drifting into the sky and falling back as endless rain. For millions of years it rained softly at times, violently at others, until the early oceans slowly pooled into the hollows of the young planet. Now picture that moment. The world finally cooling enough for water to settle. The first seas shimmering under a sun much weaker than the one you know now. These oceans were not blue. They were dark, heavy with minerals, warm like bathwater. But they were alive with potential, the birthplace of chemistry that would someday become biology. The water was more than water. It was memory waiting to be written. And over billions of years, as the oceans deepened and spread, they began sculpting the surface of Earth with a patience that feels like meditation, the soft hand of rain's arcs. Now imagine a single drop of rain falling from the sky. It lands on a bare rock face, perhaps hot volcanic basalt, or soft sediment that once lay at the bottom of an ancient sea. The drop is tiny, almost weightless. It rolls down the rock's rough surface and dries in the wind. Alone, it leaves no trace. But imagine trillions of these drops, falling day after day, century after century, for millions of years. What was once a flat surface becomes a valley. What was once a cliff becomes a winding slope. What was once a mountain face becomes a series of deep channels. Rain does not hurry, it simply persists. There's a quiet lesson in that, the idea that even the smallest, softest forces can create landscapes if given enough time. It's a reminder that the world is shaped not by sudden, dramatic gestures, but by subtle repetition. Like breathing, like waves, the story of a single river. Picture now a river flowing through a wide plain. The water is clear, cold, and steady. But it didn't always exist. In its earliest moments, the river began as nothing more than a trickle, a small path carved by rain flowing downhill. Over thousands of years, that trickle deepened. It collected more water. It widened into a stream, and eventually, it became a river, patient, powerful, unstoppable in its persistence. Let yourself float above it, as though in a gentle dream. See how the river curves, like a ribbon, like a slow, thoughtful question mark etched into the land. Over centuries, the river pushes against its outer banks, carving away rock and soil grain by grain. Meanwhile, sediment settles on the inner curve, creating soft beaches that come and go with the seasons. This dance continues for thousands of years, then tens of thousands, then millions. And something beautiful happens. The curves become exaggerated. Some loops pinch so narrow that the river eventually cuts through them, leaving behind crescent-shaped lakes, oxbows that gleam like mirrors under the moon. If you could watch this in time-lapse, it would feel like a slow-motion ballet of water and land embracing, separating, rejoining, reshaping. But in real time, it feels like nothing at all. That's the strange comfort of geology. Profound change often feels like quiet stillness. Oceans as architects now drift upward again, high enough to imagine the world from space. Look at the continents. Look at their edges, jagged, curved, irregular. That shape is the work of oceans. Waves crash, tides pull, storms rise and fall, and slowly, coastlines shift, cliffs crumble into the sea, beaches migrate, barrier islands appear, disappear, and appear again. Think of the power of waves, not in violent storms, but in gentle repetition. One wave is nothing, but billions of waves over millions of years turn mountains into sand. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a beach during low tide. The sand beneath your feet was once part of a distant mountain range. It took millions of raindrops, thousands of rivers, and uncountable ocean waves to grind that mountain into the soft grains now slipping between your toes. The ocean remembers everything it touches. Deep time in the deep ocean house. Let's drift below the surface now, down into the dim blue where sunlight fades into a gentle twilight. Down further, where the water grows cold and still. Down to the ocean floor, where sediment settles like dust in a forgotten room. Some particles settle slowly, microscopic shells of tiny sea creatures drifting down like snowflakes. Others arrive suddenly, the result of undersea landslides triggered halfway across the world. Layer by layer, the ocean floor grows thicker, and those layers become the rocks of the future. If you could hold a core sample, a long cylinder drilled from the seafloor, you would see history written in stripes. Dark layers from periods of deep ocean stillness. Pale layers from sudden blooms of life. Bands rich with clay from ancient floods. Sections sprinkled with volcanic ash from eruptions thousands of miles away. The ocean floor is the diary of the planet, and most of its pages are still locked in darkness. Now, as you let these images settle into your mind, rivers carving valleys, oceans shaping continents, rain wearing down mountains, feel your breath return to its slow, even rhythm. Water does not rush, it simply continues, and in its continuation, it creates the world. When you're ready, we'll drift into Part 3, deeper into the hidden machinery of Earth. Part 3, the great machines beneath the crust. In this chapter, imagine following your breath downward, below the oceans, below the continents, into the vast, hidden interior of our planet, a world of slow currents and ancient heat. This is Earth's heartbeat, the mantle, a slow dance of stone. Beneath the thin crust lies the mantle, a layer so thick, so immense, it makes up most of the planet's volume. Though solid, it flows, very slowly, like warm wax under pressure. Picture a pot of honey warming in sunlight. Now, slow that movement down 1,000,000 times. That is the mantle. Convection currents rise and fall in slow, looping arcs, carrying heat from deep within Earth toward the surface. These currents are what drive the movement of continents, the birth of volcanoes, and the rise of mountains. The mantle is the hidden engine of geology. If you listen closely, not with your ears, but with your imagination, you might sense a deep, steady pulse, a motion so slow it feels like stillness. But that slow motion shapes everything above. The drift of continents. Imagine the continents not as fixed land masses, but as enormous rafts floating on the mantle. They drift, collide, separate, twist, tilt, rise, sink. Each movement is measured in centimeters per year, faster than your hair grows, but slower than a dream fading after waking. And yet, over millions of years, these tiny movements accumulate. Seas open and close. Mountains rise and crumble. Deserts expand and shrink. Islands form and vanish. The world map is not a final product. It is a snapshot, a moment in an ongoing, unhurried evolution. Volcanoes, windows to the deep. Now imagine a volcano not erupting violently, but dormant, breathing quietly through small fumaroles that release warm, mineral-rich steam. Volcanoes connect the surface world with Earth's interior. They are vents, doors, windows, places where the deep heat escapes. Inside a magma chamber, molten rock cools slowly, forming crystals, quartz, feldspar, olivine, minerals born from fire, shaped by pressure. When the volcano is quiet, these minerals grow undisturbed, like tiny geometric gardens in the darkness. Over thousands of years, they cool into solid rock. And one day, far in the future, that rock might rise into a mountain, crumble into sand, settle at the bottom of an ocean, and become sedimentary layers. Nothing in geology exists alone. Everything is part of a cycle. Minerals, the planet's crystals of memory. Let your focus soften, and imagine a single crystal forming deep within the Earth. At first it is invisible, a cluster of atoms drifting into alignment. Then it grows, millimeter by millimeter, forming perfect geometric shapes in silence. Some crystals grow over millions of years. Some capture tiny bubbles of ancient air. Some become gemstones, amethyst, sapphire, diamond, shimmering remnants of deep time. To hold a crystal is to hold a moment that lasted longer than civilization. The earth grows beauty slowly. As part 3 settles in your thoughts, feel the calm weight of deep time. The mantle flowing, continents drifting, crystals forming, cycles repeating across billions of years. Earth evolves in silence. And you are part of that silence now. When you're ready, we'll drift into part 4, the story of life and landscapes shaping each other. Part 4, the earth that breathes with life. Soften your breath again. Let it match the slow rise and fall of night air outside your window. In part 4, we explore how earth and life intertwine, how landscapes shape life, and how life reshapes landscapes in return. Nothing on earth evolves alone. Life changes the land. Imagine the first plants growing on land, small, simple, moss-like organisms clinging to damp rock. They had no flowers, no leaves, no roots, but they changed everything. Their presence softened the rock. Their decay created soil. Their slow multiplication turned barren plains into green carpets. And once plants spread, erosion slowed. Soil deepened. Landscapes became gentler. Life breathes, and earth shifts with it. Forests, architects of air and stone. Now imagine the first forests, rising towering trees casting long shadows across the land. Their roots wound deep into the ground, breaking rock apart. Their fallen leaves created thick layers of nutrient-rich soil. Their trunks locked away carbon, cooling Earth's climate. Forests sculpt land just as rivers do. They slow water, stabilize slopes, build ecosystems layer by layer. A forest is not just a cluster of trees. It is a slow-moving geological force, animals and the shaping of Earth. Now drift forward in time to the age of giant creatures, dinosaurs walking across soft floodplains, marine reptiles gliding through warm, shallow seas. When a large creature steps on wet sediment, it leaves a footprint. When many footprints gather over thousands of years, they create trackways. And sometimes those trackways fossilize, preserved under layers of sand. Fossils are collaborations between life and geology. A leaf falls into mud. A creature dies near a river. A forest burns and collapses under volcanic ash. Life does not vanish. It becomes stone, ice as a sculptor of worlds. Now feel the air grow colder, and imagine Earth entering an ice age, not a single winter, but hundreds of thousands of years of global cooling. Snow piles up year after year, compressing into glaciers. These glaciers grow heavy, flowing downhill like frozen rivers. They carve valleys, sharpen mountains, flatten landscapes. Then, when the climate warms, they melt away, leaving behind carved fjords, quiet lakes, and long, smooth plains. Ice works slowly, but leaves dramatic marks. As part 4 draws to a close, let the thought settle in your mind. Life shapes Earth. Earth shapes life. And together, they create the world we know. Part 5, the sky that builds the earth. Let your breath rise gently, like a warm current drifting through the evening sky. Up until now, we've wandered through oceans, across continents, and deep into the warm layers beneath Earth's crust. But here, in part 5, we look upward into the sky, the atmosphere, the invisible ocean of air that surrounds our world. The sky feels weightless, but it is heavy, heavier than mountains, pressing softly over the entire Earth like a vast, transparent blanket. And though it seems peaceful, the atmosphere is one of the most powerful sculptors of our planet. Tonight, we drift through clouds, storms, winds, the ancient breath of Earth, and discover how the sky quietly builds and rebuilds the world beneath it. the weight of air. Take a slow breath in. Feel the air fill your lungs. Every breath you take is part of an invisible system millions of years old. The air around you is ancient, older than the mountains, older than the seas, older even than the continents drifting on the mantle. And though the air seems soft, it has weight. A column of atmosphere above your head right now weighs as much as a small car, but it presses down evenly, gently, so gently that you barely notice. This pressure drives weather, wind, storms, the shifting currents that shape landscapes slowly but with endless persistence. Air is soft, but it is never still, the whispering work of wind. Now imagine standing on a high plateau, where the wind sweeps across the land like a slow, endless breath. You feel it brush against your skin, cool and steady, but that same wind has been shaping the plateau for millions of years. Wind lifts grains of sand, one by one, carries them across vast distances, and sets them down again in new places. Over time, this movement carves patterns into rock, smooths sharp edges, and even hollows out entire arches. Consider the desert. The dunes rise and fall like waves frozen in time. They migrate slowly, some only a few centimeters a year, some several meters as the wind pushes them forward grain by grain. Imagine a single grain of sand, tiny, insignificant, but multiplied across centuries, it becomes a mountain of dunes, a landscape sculpted entirely by air. Wind is the quietest of Earth's sculptors, and one of the most patient. Storms, gentle beginnings, powerful ends. Storms feel like violent interruptions, thunder shaking the ground, lightning splitting the sky, rain falling in sheets. But every storm begins as something small, as a warm patch of air rising into the atmosphere. Imagine that warm air drifting upward. It cools, it condenses, clouds form, the sky darkens, and slowly, a storm is born. Each raindrop is tiny, but when billions of them fall for hours or days, they reshape the world. They cut through soil, feed rivers, carve new channels, move mountains one grain at a time. Even lightning, in all its brief intensity, helps life flourish, striking the ground and creating nitrogen compounds that feed plants. Storms sound dramatic, but they work slowly, in cycles that repeat across seasons, across centuries. Weather is earth-breathing, clouds, floating architects. Now imagine drifting upward into the soft, cool height of clouds. They seem gentle, weightless, but a single cloud can weigh millions of kilograms. Clouds carry water across continents. They shape climates. They determine where forests grow, where deserts expand, where rivers begin. Every time a cloud releases rain, it leaves a mark on the planet. Subtle, quiet, but permanent over long enough time. Imagine watching a cloud drift across a mountain. It cools, condenses. Rain falls only on one side of the mountain, feeding rivers that flow toward distant valleys, while the opposite side remains dry. This is how landscapes diverge. Soft differences accumulating over millions of years. Clouds are painters of the world, using water instead of color, time instead of brushstrokes. The breath of climate teen. Climate is not weather. Weather changes in hours. Climate changes in millennia. Imagine Earth in ancient times. Ice ages where glaciers covered continents. Warm greenhouse periods where tropical forests grew near the poles. Dry eras where deserts stretched across entire hemispheres. Climate shapes everything. Where animals migrate, where rivers flow, where mountains erode quickly or slowly, where life flourishes or fades. Climate is the long, slow breath of the sky, exhaling warmth, inhaling cold, cycling over millions of years. And through all these cycles, Earth shifts gently, steadily, patiently. As Part 5 closes, feel your breath merge with the rhythm of the atmosphere. Soft wind, slow rain, gentle pressure, ancient cycles. The sky is not empty. It is alive, and it is always sculpting Earth with a quiet hand. When you're ready, we'll descend into Part 6, where we explore the slow, powerful story of Earth's repeating cycles. Part 6: Cycles that never end. Settle your breath again, slow, steady, like a circle, closing gently in on itself. In this chapter, we look at the cycles that run the world, the repeating patterns that have shaped Earth since its beginning. Nothing on Earth is linear. Everything moves in cycles: water, rock, climate, life looping endlessly, slowly, beautifully. Tonight, we drift into those circles. The cycle of water. Imagine a single drop of water falling into the ocean. It might evaporate tomorrow, or 100 years from now, or not for millions of years. Water is never lost. It simply changes form. Evaporation, condensation, rain, river, sea, sky. Now imagine that same drop being lifted into a cloud, carried across a continent, falling as snow high in the mountains, melting into a stream, joining a river, returning to the ocean. Water cycles, quietly, infinitely, softly reshaping the world with each loop. The rock cycle. Rocks, too, live in cycles. A mountain erodes into sand. Sand becomes sediment. Sediment compresses into rock. Rock is pushed into the mantle, melts, rises as magma, cools as new rock, becomes a mountain again. Each step can take millions of years, yet the cycle continues endlessly, weaving Earth's surface into something ever-changing. Imagine holding a small pebble. It was once part of a mountain. Someday, it may be part of a new one. Nothing in geology is wasted. Everything becomes something else. Climate cycles. Climate warms. Ice melts. Sea levels rise. Rainfall patterns shift. Forests expand. Deserts retreat. Then the Earth cools again. Ice returns. Sea levels fall. Ecosystems migrate. This cycle has repeated dozens of times through Earth's history. Each turning of the cycle reshapes continents, species, and landscapes. Climate is a slow pendulum, never still, always changing. Magnetic cycles. Deep within Earth, molten iron in the outer core generates a magnetic field, the invisible shield that protects us from solar radiation. Every few 100,000 years, this field flips. North becomes south. South becomes north. The reversal is slow, thousands of years long, and has happened hundreds of times. These magnetic imprints remain frozen in volcanic rocks around the world, preserving a quiet record of Earth's invisible changes. The planet remembers every flip, every cycle, every pulse. Cycles are Earth's heartbeat. Water rising and falling, mountains forming and eroding, climate warming and cooling, magnetic poles drifting and reversing. Nothing stays the same, but nothing ends. It simply transforms. When you're ready, we'll move to Part 7, where we explore the deep past of Earth itself, the strange, ancient world before humans. Part 7. The ancient Earth before us. Close your eyes gently and imagine stepping backward in time. Not decades, not centuries, not even thousands of years, but millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions. Earth's history is vast, so vast that human existence is just a whisper in the final moment of a long, slow story. In Part 7, we drift into that ancient world, a landscape almost unrecognizable, filled with slow-moving forces, quiet seas, strange skies, and newly forming continents. The hazy early sky. Imagine Earth 4 billion years ago. The sky was not blue. It was thick with volcanic gases, orange, red, brown, swirling in heavy clouds. Lightning flashed constantly. Rain boiled as it hit the hot ground. And yet, slowly, oceans gathered. The atmosphere thinned. The first stable rocks cooled. The world was harsh, but peaceful in its slowness. Ancient seas. Now imagine drifting above the first shallow seas. There were no fish, no plants, No coral reefs. Just simple cells floating in warm water. But over time, millions, then billions of years, these cells changed. They learned to capture sunlight. They began producing oxygen, slowly, gently, almost imperceptibly. Oxygen filled the oceans, then the atmosphere. The sky turned blue. Life became more complex. Earth breathed differently. Strange early creatures. Imagine standing beside an ancient shoreline 600 million years ago. Strange, soft-bodied creatures ripple across the mud, shapes unlike anything today. Frond-like animals anchored to the seafloor. Disc-shaped life forms resting motionless. Tubular organisms waving gently in shallow currents. They moved slowly, lived slowly, evolved slowly. And yet, they were the ancestors of all animal life to come. The building of continents. As life changed, continents changed too. Volcanoes built new land. Tectonic plates collided. Supercontinents formed and broke apart. Each cycle took hundreds of millions of years. Earth was constantly rearranging itself like a puzzle, slowly shifting into new patterns. Imagine watching continents drift from above in fast motion. They merge into a giant landmass, then crack apart, then merge again in a different shape. The world map was never still. As Part 7 draws to a quiet close, let the scale of time soften your breath. Billions of years. Oceans rising and falling. Continents drifting like slow clouds. Life beginning as simple cells and evolving into infinite forms. The ancient Earth was different, but its rhythms were the same. Slow, patient, gentle, continuous. Part 8. The slow drift of continents. Settle into a long, slow breath. And imagine the Earth, not as a fixed sphere, but as a quiet ocean of stone, flowing so slowly you could watch it for 1,000 lifetimes and never notice it move. Yet it does move. Under every forest, every city, every stretch of desert or field, there are vast plates of rock continents drifting with the soft, patient confidence of clouds crossing a night sky. To us, continents feel eternal, stable, permanent. But in the language of geological time, they wander. Picture the Earth, 200 million years ago. All the land you know today, Africa, Asia, Europe, the Americas, was once pressed together into a single enormous continent, Pangaea, a quiet supercontinent resting on a sea of molten rock. If you could drift high above it, the way a dream floats above memory, you would see one single landmass surrounded by endless ocean, like a drifting stone in a calm, dark pool. Now imagine watching Pangaea from the perspective of deep time, not as a human, but as the Earth itself. You would see cracks begin to form, slow, delicate, almost imperceptible, the crust stretching, pulling apart, breathing outward. And then, over tens of millions of years, the pieces begin to drift. Africa glides one way, North America drifts another. The Indian plate begins a long journey northward, so patient, so slow, until it eventually collides with Eurasia, lifting the Himalayas skyward grain by grain. It's strange to think about mountains growing. They rise not like living things, but like steady exhalations of pressure, stone folding upward in silence. Yet even stranger is the idea that continents themselves move as if they're floating. Because they are. The planet's mantle, the layer beneath the crust, is solid, yet capable of flowing over immense spans of time. It moves like honey warmed by a gentle flame, circulating in slow currents. These currents push and pull the plates above them, guiding the continents on journeys that last hundreds of millions of years. If you could place your hand on the ground and feel not just the Earth you know, but the Earth in motion, you might sense a soft, steady migration under your palm, continents gliding at about the speed your fingernails grow. And somehow, that slowness is comforting. It tells us that change doesn't always appear in loud or sudden ways. Sometimes the most profound transformations happen quietly, so quietly they escape the notice of a single lifetime. Imagine lying on the warm ground of a quiet plain at dusk. You feel the last rays of sunlight fading, the air cooling, the wind softening into stillness. Beneath you, miles of stone extend downward, and beneath that, miles more, all slowly shifting, rearranging, drifting. But the movement is so gentle you never feel it. The landscape changes only over ages. Tonight, let yourself drift with the continents. Let yourself feel the comfort of slow change. Change that doesn't demand anything, doesn't rush you, doesn't pull you out of rest. In the world of geology, movement is a lullaby, a slow, ancient drifting, guiding you deeper into calm. Let your breath become soft again. In, gently. Out, even more gently. As we follow the continents deeper into their quiet migrations across geological time, the surface of the Earth may feel still beneath you, but if you could see the planet from far above, far beyond the atmosphere, beyond the soft glow of the upper sky, you might notice something subtle and astonishing. You would see the continents as immense rafts of stone, drifting on a sea of slow, molten motion. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with the slow confidence of something that has all the time in the world. The Earth's outer shell, the lithosphere, is not a single continuous skin. It is cracked, broken into puzzle pieces, and each piece moves. Some drift apart, opening wide oceans between them. Some press together, folding mountains upward like soft fabric. Some slide gently past one another, murmuring in long, deep friction. But beneath all this is the mantle, moving in slow, convecting swirls, currents so vast and gentle that they cradle continents like drifting leaves on a warm tide. Imagine holding a bowl of warm honey and watching it move when you tilt it slightly. It flows, but not in a way that feels fluid. It flows like time itself. That is the mantle, and the plates the continents glide on top. Now imagine yourself deep beneath the surface of the Earth, where the heat is so intense that rock becomes soft enough to move, yet solid enough to hold shape. In this twilight zone of stone, currents rise and fall like a slow, steady heartbeat. Over millions of years, these currents push the continents away from one another, or pull them closer, or send them drifting sideways along the seams of the planet. This is the Earth's stone-breathing cycle. Not a breath of air but of motion, of continents drifting outward, and then slowly returning inward through the ages. And sometimes, continents wander so far that they become strangers to themselves. Take Australia, for example. Once connected to Antarctica, it drifted northward like a quiet traveler. Its forests changed, its animals evolved, its climate transformed. All because the continent slowly, gently sailed away from the frozen southern world into warmer latitudes. Or consider South America, drifting westward, pressing into the Pacific plate. The pressure of this movement slowly lifted the Andes one grain, one fold at a time, until a great mountain wall rose between ocean and sky. A wall made not through sudden violence, but through steady, patient uplift. And somewhere, deep in the quiet shift of geological time, the Amazon basin once held a giant inland sea, a reminder that even the greatest rainforests grow atop landscapes that have lived many lives. What's soothing about this is that continents never rush. They never hurry to be anywhere other than where they are. Their pace is the pace of rest, a speed that matches deep sleep, deep stillness. Imagine lying on soft grass under a sky streaked with slow-moving clouds. The air is warm, the breeze barely noticeable, and beneath you, though you cannot feel it, the land itself drifts as quietly as the clouds above. A perfect symmetry. Sky drifting above, earth drifting below. This drifting shapes everything. It changes where oceans open, where mountains rise, where climates shift, where species evolve. But because it happens so slowly, the changes feel almost like lullabies, long, gentle rearrangements written in stone. If you could sit at the same coastline for 100 million years, you would watch the waves gradually move away, or draw closer, or rise into mountain cliffs. You would see land bridges appear and fade. You would see islands grow, merge, or crumble back into the sea. But from the perspective of a single life, your life, the continents feel eternal. This is the gift of deep time. The reminder that the world changes at a pace far too slow to disrupt our rest, our breath, our quiet moments. It moves like a distant dream, always shifting, never rushing. For tonight, let the drifting of continents be a comfort. Let it remind you that change can be soft, that movement can be peaceful, that even the earth, vast, ancient, powerful, moves with a calmness that invites sleep. You are drifting too, not across oceans of stone, but into a deeper state of ease, carried by the slow, ancient rhythm of the planet. Take another slow breath, in, gentle and calm, and out, letting the body grow heavy and relaxed. We're drifting now into the final part of the continent's long journey through time, a quiet, epic story of constant rearrangement, told in movements too slow for any single lifetime to witness. Continents are like travelers who never stop moving, even when they appear still. Over hundreds of millions of years, they wander through climates, through latitudes, through entire eras of life. And as they drift, they repaint the world, shaping the oceans, the winds, the currents, the ecosystems above them. Imagine, for a moment, the Earth 250 million years in the future. The continents have drifted so far that their shapes would feel strange to you. Oceans you know today have shrunk into narrow scars. Mountains that exist now have eroded into quiet hills. And somewhere on the planet, a new supercontinent has begun to form, a vast landmass, created by the slow, patient inward drift of tectonic plates. This future supercontinent might gather near the equator, or fold together near the poles, or stretch across latitudes the way Pangaea once did. But regardless of its shape, it will form the same way all continents do, slowly, quietly, beyond the scale of human noise. When continents come together, the Earth murmurs in pressure. Deep beneath the surface, plates press against one another like two enormous breaths meeting. Stone folds, heat builds, mountains rise, the crust thickens, and entire ocean basins close, disappearing into the silence of geological memory. But it never happens suddenly. Every collision is stretched across tens of millions of years, wide, calm arcs of motion. Imagine watching it as if you were suspended above the planet, observing not minutes or days but millennia and epochs flowing past like seconds. You would see continents drifting toward one another as though pulled by invisible threads. You would watch seas shrink. You would watch coastlines tighten. And then, over unimaginable time, land masses merge. During these slow collisions, the Earth builds mountains, vast ranges that take shape not in roaring upheavals, but in soft, steady pulses of uplift. Think of the Appalachian Mountains, now worn into gentle curves. They were once as tall as the Himalayas, formed by ancient continental collisions that fused pieces of land we now call North America, Europe, and Africa. All of it, every ridge, every grain of metamorphic rock, every fossilized memory was written by the quiet press of drifting continents. But drifting doesn't only create, it also dissolves. When continents pull apart, the Earth exhales. Rifts open like slow, glowing scars, places where new crust forms as magma rises, cools, and becomes part of the ocean floor. These rifts are the birthplaces of oceans, such as the Atlantic. Once dry land, the Atlantic began as a long, narrow crack, a silent tear in Pangaea. Over millions of years, that tear widened into a sea, then into an ocean, and now into the vast blue expanse that separates continents today. If you were to stand at the edge of the mid-Atlantic ridge, the long underwater spine where new crust forms, you would be standing at the birthplace of Earth's youngest rocks. These newborn stones emerge warm, then cool, then drift outward over ages, joining the slow outward breath of the seafloor. And above that quiet, glowing ridge is darkness, the deep ocean, soft and cold, moving with its own silent rhythms. Even the oceans drift because the continents drift, and life follows. Where continents meet, mountains rise and rivers change course, guiding new ecosystems into existence. Where continents separate, coastlines shift, climates warm or cool, and species migrate across newly connected or newly isolated lands. Evolution itself dances to the slow music of drifting plates. There is comfort in this vast, gentle rearrangement. A reminder that the world changes slowly, deeply, and without haste, that even the most dramatic transformations unfold in silence. Now imagine lying on a warm patch of earth, the starry sky stretching above you. The land beneath you, this stable ground you've known your whole life, is quietly drifting, like a great stone ship gliding across a sea of molten currents. You don't feel it, you don't hear it, but you are part of that motion, carried effortlessly through geological time. Drifting with the continents is like drifting into sleep, slow, calm, inevitable, a gentle release into something older and wider than memory. So as this segment settles into quiet, let your breath follow the pace of the planet itself, unhurried, soft, ancient, moving in a rhythm deeper than thought. The continents will continue their patient journeys long after this moment. But for now, you can rest in the simple understanding that the ground beneath you, like you, is always moving towards something new, slowly and peacefully. Part 9. The rise and fall of ancient oceans. Settle into a long, soft breath. Let the shoulders loosen, the jaw relax, the body soften into calm. Tonight, we drift into the deep, ancient memory of Earth's oceans, not the bright blue world we know today, but seas that lived and vanished hundreds of millions of years before humans existed. Oceans that rose, expanded, faded, and disappeared into mountain ranges, into stone, into silence. The oceans of the past were not constant. They were wanderers, just like the continents that shaped them. Imagine the Earth long before the first forests, long before the first dinosaurs, when much of the planet was covered by shallow, sunlit seas. These weren't endless abysses of cold and darkness. They were warm, gentle basins, places where life began, quietly and slowly, in the soft sway of mineral-rich water. If you stood on the shore of one of these ancient seas, you would see a world that feels familiar and foreign at the same time. The water would shimmer in muted greens and pale golds. Waves would lap at the sand with a slow, rhythmic hush, the same sound that today helps people fall asleep, the same timeless whisper that existed long before human ears ever heard it. And beneath that water lay an entire universe of life. Simple creatures moving across the seafloor, coral-like structures rising in quiet clusters, tiny organisms drifting with the currents like glowing dust, shells falling slowly, slowly, through the water column, each one a quiet punctuation mark in the long sentence of geological time. As millions of years passed, those shells accumulated, layer upon layer, becoming thick curtains of sediment. Pressure slowly compressed them into limestone stone, woven from the remains of ancient oceans. To hold a piece of limestone in your hand today is to hold a memory of an ocean that no longer exists. A sea that breathed millions of years ago, now resting silently in your palm. But oceans do not stay where they are. They expand and contract like the Earth's long, geological breath. When continents pull apart, oceans widen. When continents drift together, oceans shrink. And sometimes, entire oceans close forever. One of the most beautiful examples is the Tethys Ocean, a warm, tropical sea that once stretched between the drifting fragments of ancient continents. For more than 200 million years, it flourished. Reefs grew, fish evolved, sediment layers deepened. The Tethys shimmered under long-forgotten suns like a sleeping dream. But slowly, so slowly, no creature living at the time could ever notice the ocean began to close. The Indian continent drifted northward with patient determination, inching closer to Eurasia. As it did, the Tethys grew narrower, its waters shallower, its coastlines tighter. Coral reefs died and became limestone, deep basins filled with sediment, and eventually, the ocean disappeared. In its place rose something new, something immense. The Himalayas, where water once drifted, mountains now stand. And within those mountains are fossils of shells, corals, and ancient seabed creatures. Entire cliffs composed of the remains of a vanished ocean. You could walk high into the Himalayas, miles above the sea, and place your hand on stone that was once the bottom of a warm, tropical marine world. It's strange and soothing to imagine. The tallest mountains on Earth were once the quiet floors of ancient seas. Ocean becomes stone, stone becomes mountain, mountain becomes dust, dust returns to water, and the cycle begins again, slow, gentle, eternal. This rhythm of rise and fall, of water giving way to rock and rock giving way to water, is one of the Earth's deepest lullabies. A story told not in waves or storms, but in silence, the silence of millions of years passing like soft footsteps. Tonight, let your mind float on that ancient sea. Let yourself drift in warm, shallow water that existed long before humans, under a sky without cities, without noise, without urgency, a place where time moved only in tides, in currents, in slow, drifting sunlight. The oceans of the past are gone, but their memory is everywhere, beneath mountains, beneath deserts, beneath your own feet. And when we listen closely, we can still feel their calm. As the ancient coastline continued to reshape itself across millions of slow, unhurried years, something delicate and almost poetic began happening beneath the soft, shifting waves. The shore was no longer just a boundary of land and sea, it became a cradle for something new, something that moved with intention rather than drifting with the current. Tiny organisms, barely noticeable at first, began to gather in warm tidal pools, feeding on minerals carried in by the rhythmic pulse of waves. These pools shimmered under the sun like liquid glass, trapping warmth throughout the day and releasing it slowly as night fell. In this gentle cycle of heating and cooling, of water evaporating and returning, of minerals dissolving and reforming, the earliest hints of structure emerged: thin membranes, small chemical clusters, tiny echoing patterns that repeated themselves as if the Earth were rehearsing the blueprint of life. At night, when the sky filled with distant stars, the pools seemed to glow ever so faintly with organic potential. And although no creature yet had eyes to witness it, this faint shimmering was the beginning of something profound. Molecules bumped into one another, joined, separated, and joined again, guided not by intention but by chance, and yet, with each repetition, the patterns grew more stable, more predictable, more alive. Meanwhile, on the coastline itself, the constant push and pull of the tides carved new alcoves and channels, shaping habitats that changed by the hour. During high tide, waves plunged deep into narrow cracks, filling them with nutrient-rich water. During low tide, the pools were left exposed to sunlight, wind, and long hours of stillness. This alternating rhythm, motion and calm, flood and retreat, became a natural laboratory, a place where stability and change danced together in a balanced, gentle cycle. In this environment, early microbial mats began to lace across the rock surfaces. They felt soft, almost gelatinous, like thin blankets settling across stone, and with every tidal shift, they grew stronger. What started as fragile films eventually turned into robust colonies that clung to the rocks like living tapestries. The coastline, once shaped by volcanic blasts and violent shifts, now supported a quieter kind of activity. Tiny communities absorbing sunlight, converting minerals, and slowly weaving the first threads of biological complexity. The air grew subtly different as these early pioneers began releasing small traces of oxygen, a quiet exhale that would one day transform the entire planet. Far from dramatic, these changes were peaceful, slow, and deeply rhythmic. Each day resembled the last, and yet, With every passing tide, something in the world was just a little more alive. As hundreds of thousands of years slipped by like soft grains of sand through open fingers, the coastline transformed once more, not through sudden cataclysms, but through the quiet persistence of time itself. Waves smoothed the once jagged volcanic stones into rounded shapes, each one polished by countless cycles of water and wind. The soundscape of the shore shifted from sharp impacts to gentle washes, a whispering conversation between ocean and land. In the newly softened landscape, life began to organize itself with greater confidence. Microbial mats thickened into layered structures, each layer living in harmony with the light, nutrients, and conditions provided by the one beneath it. These mats created ripples, tiny ridges that looked like frozen waves resting upon stone. They were among the first signs that life wasn't just surviving, it was shaping the planet around it. Inside the sheltered pools, early genetic systems grew more stable. Molecules learned to copy themselves more reliably, to fold into useful shapes, and to protect their fragile structures from the harshness of the open environment. Slowly, the coastline became dotted with micro-ecosystems, communities of individuals that depended on one another for survival. And as these communities grew, so too did the complexity of their interactions. Some organisms fed on sunlight, spreading across rock surfaces in soft, velvety layers. Others consumed the waste left behind by their neighbors, turning it into new energy. Even in these early days, the foundations of cooperation and competition began to take shape. The water itself reflected this quiet transformation. What had once been clear and empty now shimmered with suspended particles of organic matter. On sunny afternoons, the pools glowed with a subtle haze, like golden dust suspended in liquid. And during nighttime low tides, the mats released faint bioluminescent flickers, soft pinpoints of light that drifted across the darkened water. It was here, in these shallow, protected waters, that simple photosynthetic organisms began to flourish. Each day, they rose gently toward the sunlight, forming delicate sheets of color, faint greens, soft browns, subtle blues, and with every sunrise, they exhaled a little more oxygen into the world. The coastline breathed slower, deeper, and with more intention. Across the vastness of time, nothing seemed rushed. Nothing seemed forced. Everything unfolded in a natural rhythm, one that echoed the steady movement of waves. With each generation, thousands of cycles in the blink of a cosmic eye, life grew more capable, more intricate, and more deeply connected to the land that nurtured it. The world was still quiet, still empty of sound beyond wind and water, but just beneath the surface, a silent revolution was taking place. A revolution not of fire or stone, but of cells learning to live, replicate, and shape the very planet they called home. Part 10. The First Breath of a Changing World. As the ancient coastline continued its slow, patient evolution, the world entered a chapter that felt almost like a quiet awakening. For billions of years, the Earth had been wrapped in an atmosphere that remained dim, hazy, and heavy with volcanic gases. Sunlight filtered through it in muted shades, as though the sky itself were always just a little drowsy. But now, something was beginning to shift. Tiny photosynthetic organisms, descendants of the early microbial mats lining the tidal pools, had spent countless generations performing the same gentle miracle, capturing sunlight and releasing oxygen. At first, their contribution was so small it dissolved immediately into the surrounding waters, unnoticed and unfelt. But over immense spans of time, the quiet exhalations accumulated like whispers building into a soft chorus. The oceans held this new oxygen the way a sleeping forest might hold. Morning mist slowly, delicately, almost unsure what to do with it. Minerals dissolved in the water began reacting with the oxygen, forming rusty layers that drifted down and settled on the seafloor. These layers stacked into bands deep red, charcoal black, deep crimson again, forming the beautiful banded iron formations we can still find on Earth today. To us, they look like artwork, intentional, almost ceremonial. But in reality, they are the planet's first journal entries describing the rise of oxygen. Above the water, the atmosphere remained mostly unchanged. But deep within the global ocean, transformation had already begun. Life was still simple. No eyes, no limbs, no voices. Yet its effect on the world was profound. Each sunrise brought gentle beams of energy that fell across the shallow pools, warming their surfaces and stirring the microbial colonies awake. As the light intensified through the morning, these communities began photosynthesizing, exhaling oxygen into the water like a slow, rhythmic breath. In the afternoons, when the tides retreated and the pools were exposed to open air, oxygen bubbles formed delicate chains along the edges of the mats. They clung there like tiny pearls, shimmering softly under the sun. Many of the bubbles popped quietly, merging with the atmosphere above. It was one of the earliest moments, perhaps the first, when life and sky truly touched one another. Little by little, the balance of gases in the world began to shift. At first, it was a fragile dance, oxygen rising here, being consumed there, swirling through waters that didn't yet know how to hold it. But with each generation, the photosynthetic organisms grew in number and confidence. They spread across rock surfaces, across shallow basins, and into protected lagoons. Wherever sunlight reached, they followed. The Earth's surface, once dominated by darkness and uncertainty, began to glow faintly with new energy. And yet, even as oxygen whispered into the air for the first time, no creature existed to savor the freshness of that breath. There were no lungs to inhale it, no wings to slice through the revitalized sky. The world was changing for an audience not yet born, preparing a stage that would one day host an explosion of life far more complex than these early pioneers. Still, the shift was unmistakable. The coastline began to feel subtly different. The colors in the tidal pools grew richer. The surfaces of microbial mats shone more vibrantly in the sun, and the shallow waters seemed clearer, more awake. It was as if the planet itself sensed the change and responded in its own quiet, ancient way. Deep within these waters, early oxygen molecules wandered freely, bumping into minerals, drifting upward, and slowly beginning to accumulate in the air above. This was the great oxygenation event, but in its earliest moments, it felt nothing like a catastrophe and everything like a gradual dawn. Slow, gentle, inevitable. A dawn unfolding not in minutes or hours, but in millions of years. And through it all, the tides continued their familiar rhythm. Waves rolled in with steady patience, washing over the growing colonies of photosynthetic life, feeding them, strengthening them, and carrying their precious oxygen out into deeper waters. The Earth had taken its first breath, and though no creature yet noticed, the world would never be the same. A slow reshaping of ocean and sky. As oxygen seeped quietly into the ocean, the world entered a period of delicate tension, the kind that builds not through chaos, but through gentle persistence. For countless ages, Earth's early atmosphere had been a dense mixture of methane, carbon dioxide, and volcanic gases. It was a sky shaped by eruptions and ash, heavy and warm, like a thick blanket wrapped tightly around the young planet. But the silent rise of oxygen changed everything. At first, the oxygen never reached open air. It was swallowed instantly by dissolved iron and other hungry minerals that drifted through the oceans. Each time the two met, they embraced in chemical reactions that painted the seafloor with rusty sediments. Layer after layer accumulated, forming iron-rich stripes that held the memory of each passing era. Slowly, these iron deposits grew so immense that they no longer needed oxygen's attention. And with the minerals satisfied, the oceans finally began allowing oxygen to remain free. A quiet, drifting presence that wandered through the water like a new spirit, exploring unfamiliar terrain. This freedom marked a turning point. In the shallows, Microbial mats thickened into vibrant colonies that shimmered whenever light passed through them. Their pigments absorbed the sun like warm nourishment, and their structures folded and unfolded with the tides, almost as if they breathed. As oxygen levels rose within these tiny ecosystems, new metabolic pathways emerged. Some organisms adapted by embracing the newfound gas. Others collapsed under its reactive force. For the first time, life was forced to choose, adapt or fade away. Yet even in this moment of biological branching, the process felt serene. Nothing about the change was abrupt. Even extinction unfolded gently, over thousands of generations. The ocean absorbed the transformation with calm acceptance, as though it understood that oxygen, once introduced, would become a defining feature of everything to come. Above the water's surface, the sky began to shift in almost imperceptible ways. Complex methane molecules broke apart when struck by sunlight, leaving behind clearer, more open skies. Slowly, the haze that had once surrounded the Earth thinned. The world brightened. Sunbeams reached the surface with greater clarity, glinting across the coastline's polished stones and illuminating the tidal pools with a soft, crystalline glow. The temperature dropped just a little. The colors deepened just a little. The edges of the horizon grew sharper, more defined. Dawn and dusk stretched in softer gradients, transitioning between gold and violet in a way the planet had never seen before. Life, without eyes, without awareness, still responded. Photosynthetic mats expanded into vast carpets lining the coastal plains. Filamentous colonies drifted lazily in the sunlight, rising and falling with the tide like slow-motion clouds suspended underwater. The Earth had not yet become the oxygen-rich world we know, but the transformation was underway, spreading like a gentle tide across both ocean and atmosphere. And with every passing millennium, oxygen became less a stranger and more a quiet resident of the planet. The quiet rise toward a breathable world. As the millennia unfolded, oxygen quietly accumulated above the oceans, slipping into the atmosphere one breath at a time. The transformation was slow, so slow it could never be witnessed within a single lifetime, or 1,000 lifetimes, but across deep time. It reshaped everything. Layers of haze that once dimmed the sunlight began to dissolve. The sky shifted from muted copper tones to deeper, clearer blues. Scattered light danced differently through the thinning atmosphere, creating softer shadows and luminous reflections on the water's surface. The world was becoming brighter, but also colder. With methane levels dropping, Earth lost part of its insulating warmth. Glaciers formed at the poles, spreading like quiet sheets of glass across landmasses that had only recently cooled from volcanic fire. The Great Oxygenation Event, though born from peaceful photosynthesis, had set the stage for some of the earliest ice ages, long stretches of chill that wrapped the planet in shimmering frost. Yet, even amid the cold, life persisted. In shallow waters where sunlight still reached, photosynthetic organisms continued to flourish, undisturbed by the cooling climate. They absorbed light, exhaled oxygen, and drifted gently with the tides. Their presence created micro-environments filled with warmth and energy. Deeper in the oceans, organisms that had once thrived in oxygen-poor waters now sought refuge in hidden pockets and sediment layers. Some evolved new metabolic strategies. Others retreated to environments untouched by oxygen's expanding reach. A few vanished entirely, becoming quiet footnotes in the story of life. The coastline itself changed in character. Ice advanced and retreated over slow geological cycles, carving new edges into the land. The tidal pools that had once nurtured early life glistened under thinner skies. Sunlight danced across their surfaces with a clarity that had never existed before. And all the while, oxygen levels continued their gentle rise. The shift had no soundtrack, no rush, no violence, only the soft accumulation of a gas that would one day allow lungs to expand, wings to beat, and creatures to roam the land. But in this ancient era, Oxygen was simply a presence, a potential, a promise. One tide at a time, the young Earth prepared itself for complexity. The atmosphere, once toxic and heavy, moved steadily toward balance. Oceans learned to hold and circulate oxygen more effectively, and as new chemical pathways opened, life diversified in ways subtle yet profound. It was a world in transition, neither the hostile planet of fire and gas that came before, nor the vibrant, oxygen-rich home it would one day become. It existed in an in-between state, a moment suspended across millions of years, where change was constant, but never hurried. Here, in this calm, patient chapter of Earth's story, the foundations were laid for every breath that would ever be taken.